Hey, what's up guys? Ethan Hamrick here with wishuponafish and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a few tips to keep in mind when you're bass fishing in clear water. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so the first thing I like to do when I'm bass fishing in clear bodies of water is downsize my tackle. Everything from my line, my lures, my hooks, my weights. I like to just downsize my tackle when I'm fishing in that clear water. For example, if I'm fishing water that's real clear, say 3 or 4 feet of visibility or better, I'm going to be using real light line most of the time. Like say I'm fishing around grass and flipping grass. Instead of using that heavier line like 20 or 25 pound line, I'm going to go down to 10, 12, maybe 15 pound line, depending on how thick the cover is I'm going to be fishing. So usually the cleaner the water I'm fishing, the lighter the line I'm going to use. Also, as far as lures go, anytime I'm fishing clean water, I like to downsize my lures. Instead of using a heavier ½ ounce or 3/4 ounce jig, I might go down to a 1/4 ounce or 3/8 ounce jig that's much smaller in profile and it's much more compact bait and isn't as intrusive as a heavier, larger jig. Now, along with the jigs, instead of using a full-size trailer, this is a Strike King Rage Tail Crawl, usually I'll tear a section of that trailer off. So instead of using the whole thing, I'll tear a section of it off and just decrease the profile of that bait, make it look a lot smaller so that it fits up on that bait better. So I've got my trailer up on that jig, and instead of having the legs of that trailer hang way back down here, those legs are closer to the hook and makes that bait smaller, more compact, and easier for those fish to eat. Also, I like to downsize my worms. Instead of using a bigger worm, like a big old wide thick worm, I want to go down to a smaller profile worm, shorter worm that's not as thick and won't give off as big of a profile as a larger bait in the water. If I'm using soft plastic swim baits, instead of using a larger 5 or 6 inch swim bait, I may go down to a 2 or 3 inch swim bait in that clean water. Or if I'm fishing with a crankbait, instead of using a traditional sized squirrel crankbait, I may go down to a smaller size squirrel crankbait. You can see the difference. This is a Strike King KVD 1.5 and this is a Strike King KVD 1.0. So there's a big difference in that size there. Just decreases the profile and it isn't as intrusive to those fish in that clean water. And I do the same with my lipless crankbaits. Instead of using a ½ ounce, I may go down to like a 1/4 ounce lipless crankbait, much smaller in profile and in weight, and just works better in that clean water. Now, another thing I like to keep in mind when I'm fishing clean water is the color of the baits I'm using. I like to keep it pretty simple and stick with just a couple of basic color patterns. Anything that looks natural. All natural colors excel in clear water. So anything that's green pumpkin, watermelon green, watermelon red, brown, anything like that, it looks natural in that clear water, appears natural to those fish in their habitat, in that clean water habitat, and just works better than those darker colored lures when you're fishing clean water. And I like to stick with those color patterns with most every bait. Soft plastic baits and hard baits, those more natural, translucent color patterns are going to excel in that clear water over those darker baits. So keep that in mind when you're on clear fisheries. Now, one bait that I prefer over any other bait when I'm fishing clear water is a jerkbait. A hard suspending jerkbait is my favorite hard lure to throw in clear water. Fishing a jerkbait is a very visual technique, so it allows those fish in that clear water to see it from a long ways away as it suspends in the water column and can draw fish from quite a ways away in that clear water. Most of the time I'll use a standard size jerkbait, but a lot of times if the fishing is tough, I will downsize to a smaller jerkbait. It's just a great lure to throw in that clear water. Like I said, it'll draw fish from a long ways away and is my favorite technique when I'm bass fishing in clear water. Now, my favorite soft plastic bait to throw in clear water has to be a Senko. The Senko is a very simple lure, very versatile lure. I can fish it a lot of different ways. It appears very natural to those fish and it's not intrusive. It's a very subtle presentation, so I just love a Senko. Whether I fish it wacky style, Texas rig, Carolina rig, Nico rig, on a Ned rig. So a Senko is my favorite soft plastic lure to throw in that clear water. Now, a few more tips I like to keep in mind when I'm on clear fisheries is that obviously fish can see a lot better when the water's clear. So it's important to stay far away from your target. Usually I like to stay a good 10 to 20 yards away from where I'm casting to. If you get too close to those fish and start spooking them, you're probably not going to catch them. And also, if you can see them, they can probably definitely see you in that clear water. So just keep that in mind. Also, when you're fishing clear water, be sure to cast way beyond your target. If you're fishing a clump of grass, don't throw right on top of that grass with your bait. Throw a good 5 or 10 yards past that clump of grass and reel your bait back over it or through that vegetation or cover, wherever you're fishing. Because if you threw right on top of that target, you're going to spook that fish. And that goes for any type of water, clear, stained, or muddy. Never throw right on top of the target. Always throw over over your target. Now another thing I like to keep in mind when I'm fishing clear bodies of water, especially where the visibility is extremely high, like 6 feet or more, I like to look for that deeper water where it's harder for those fish to see you. A lot of times if you're fishing real shallow and clear water, those fish see you way before you see them and will spook very easily. So I like to look for that water that's deeper than what the visibility is in that lake. If I've got 6 foot of visibility, I want to look for water that's deeper than 6 feet. Preferably 8 or 10 feet deep if I've got 6 feet of visibility. So that's just another thing I like to do when I'm fishing that clear water. Is just look for that deeper water where it will be more difficult for those fish to see you. Also, when you're fishing clear water, be as quiet as possible. And that goes for any time you're fishing, period, but especially in clear water. Be as quiet as you can, because those fish are more wary in clear water. They can see more and sense more, and so just be as quiet as possible. Don't make a lot of unnecessary noise when you're fishing clear bodies of water. Another thing I like to do is position my boat to where the sun is not going to cast a shadow on the area I'm fishing. If the sun's casting a shadow right on the area where you're fishing, those fish can see that shadow in that clear water especially, and will spook very easily. So I like to position my boat where there's not going to be any type of shadow on the area I'm casting to or I'm fishing. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope these tips help you the next time you find yourself bass fishing on a clear body of water. Be sure to keep some of these tips in mind. Downsize your line, lures, hooks, and weights. Position your boat a good distance from the area you're casting to. Try to be as quiet as possible so you don't spook fish. And look for fish in that deeper water and see how many fish you can put in the boat. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to smash that like button. Subscribe to our channel up in this corner. Check out our last video up in this corner and some of our other videos down below. And there will be a lot more exciting and helpful fishing videos headed your way. We'll see you soon.